This is the Wally and Methot Show. Now, here are your hosts, Brent Wallace and Mark Methot.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wally and Methot Show. I'm Brent Wallace. He's Mark Methot. It is a Monday morning. Happy to see everybody. Matt, before we get going, have you heard about the All or Nothing series with the Toronto Maple Leafs out on Amazon? I don't know if you watched it, but you've heard about it?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I haven't seen it yet, though.
You didn't tell us that you were a central figure in episode number 2.
What do you mean?
I'm watching episode 2, and then all of a sudden, I look and William Nylander's taking a shot, and who's right there to try and block it, but none other than number 3, Mark Methot.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see it. Okay, I'll have to tune into that. What happened on that shot? Is there a goal?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's good. I got a minus there on that play. I'll just assume it was a power play or something we were killing. I should have sagged out more based off that screenshot. I'll have to take a look at it, though. I'm sure I'll be able to blame a forward at some point.
But hey, you're in the episode, so good for you. I just can't believe you didn't bring it up sooner that you were a big star.
I haven't seen it. I'll tune in and I'll let you know what I think of that play.
It's about a second long, by the way. I think the whole entire sequence is about a second. So I had to freeze it and take the picture.
Then never mind. I never had any intention on watching that. So, but maybe I'll tune in on episode 2. We'll see.
It's not bad. The only thing I don't like about it is it's sanitized. I know there's tons of F-bombs, but it's sanitized because the Leafs get a say in how it's all produced. And so It cuts down on a lot of stuff that probably
How would you compare it to like any of the Hard Knock series that like the NFL stuff?
Those ones are much better. All because I think there's less editorial choice in it. But the Leaf one's pretty good. It's just you can see stuff that gets left out. Like there's a scene with John Tavares and his uncle, and they're just sitting there, and John's like, "Oh man, I really didn't appreciate how great you were as a lacrosse player." And his uncle was the best lacrosse player ever played. But it's just this very
kind of scripted almost.
It's just scripted. It just bugs me a little, but it's not bad. Like it's been good to watch just to see. Anybody loves behind the scenes stuff, which is what always gets people excited. I just want to see stuff I can't see all the time. And so that's what we try to bring here sometimes when we get you and we get guests on, we get to talk about behind the scenes stuff. And that might as well get right to our guest, who's also been behind the scenes quite a bit in his career. Joining us now to chat on this Monday is Brendan Bell, a former Toronto Maple Leaf draft pick. We won't hold that against you. Ottawa native, CHL Defenseman of the Year, also a former Ottawa Senator and New York Ranger and Phoenix Coyote. Brendan Bell, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Wally. Yeah, former lot of things. And you say behind the scenes. I was behind the scenes a lot too. Spent a lot of time in the dressing room and in the press box. So that's where all the good stories happen.
Exactly. But you still got to play and live out a dream that thousands or millions of us never get to do. It looks like you're actually auditioning for the GM role of Kyle Dubas in the All or Nothing scene in your office here. Are you breaking down lines in the back or what?
Yeah, no, I've got my to-do list that doesn't get updated nearly as regularly as Kyle Dubas's depth chart. But I had to make it into the office this morning, so I don't have the fancy background like you guys do. Although I've spent so much time on Zoom over the last year and a half, 2 years that I should. The home office setup is better than this one, but usually I've got the Golden Gate Bridge or like a picture of the golf course or something in the background. But I wanted to make it raw and authentic for you guys. See, this is how fancy my day-to-day life is.
It's nice.
I'll get you a meth bobblehead to spruce things up.
Oof.
That would be great.
All right, let's get into. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you can see, Brendan, but I've spent $6 on ink just to print a picture of you to cover up Jaromir Jagr, just to make it feel more special. And I found the best jersey I could find, and that is the old black Sens block jersey. Do you have one of those?
I don't. I actually tried at given points. Like I played for 18 or 19 teams in 13 years, and I tried to collect jerseys wherever I could. And I mean, there's a bunch of AHL teams in there too, and they're not, very willing to part with jerseys and anything that costs them $1 in a lot of instances. So I've got a bunch of jerseys in the basement. I don't have a Sens jersey. I don't know where they are or where they've landed. I'm sure they're collecting dust at the CTC in the back room or something, and I could probably get my hands on one. But that would not be the one that I'm looking for.
Not a big fan of it, eh?
No, all that tongue. I'm going to hear about it from any friends and family that have known me going way back. That is a Brendan Bell face right there, and that is not pretty.
Yeah, those jerseys were. I mean, and no offense. I mean, I'm sure at the time they were nice, but I was never a fan of that. Like, it's just kind of. It was almost kind of tragic. But I'm glad they moved away from it.
Yeah, we were so pumped to get a third jersey. Like it was kind of around that time where other teams had started doing it. Sens hadn't done anything at that point, and we just thought, like, this is the greatest thing ever. We've got black jerseys. We've got a third option. And so we were just happy to have anything. But you look back on it and, like, that's a bad jersey. I mean, the color schemes on the arms are all wrong. I mean, the logo is like, who decided that was a good idea?
I was going to say, somewhere out there, whoever designed these jerseys, it'll be sent this clip and they're just going to cry about it. So no, you know what, at the time, I'm sure their heart was in the right place and they were fun for a little bit, but I think they moved on in the right way afterwards. So all good.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, that logo must've been made on a dedeadline. Like, we've got to have a logo by Tuesday at noon.
Let's go. Bang it out.
The creatives just couldn't get it done. Yeah.
All right, so hang on. You talked about 19 teams. So you got the St. John's Maple Leafs, Toronto Marlies, Toronto Maple Leafs, Phoenix Coyotes, San Antonio Rampage, Binghamton Senators, Ottawa Senators, Peoria Rivermen, Syracuse Crunch, Avangard Omsk, EHC Beal or Bale? Beal,
yeah.
Connecticut Whale, the New York Rangers, Flolunda, the Admirals, Chicago Wolves, and Bolzano. So what's your favorite jersey of all those?
Oh, Flolunda Indians, no doubt about it. That's an easy one.
It's pretty good.
I like the classics. I was lucky that I played for the Leafs, played for the Rangers for a few minutes. But the Flolunda Indians one was awesome. Like, they've got that old school. I'm sure most Sens fans have seen it because, I mean, Alfie, Carl, a
Lehner,
bunch of guys have come through there. Lenny's from Gothenburg. I don't know that he played for Flolunda though.
Yeah, he may not have played. Yeah.
But, that is cool. I just looked it up.
It's awesome. Like, I've got a bunch of, like the Gitch stuff that we get, Meth, like the training gear and all that stuff. And that's the one, though, like, I don't even wear them, but I can't bring myself to throw them out because they're just like, that logo is so good. And the colors are great too. Like, it's bright red or bright green.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got fortunate enough when the Sens went over to play, and it was 07 or 08. They played in Frölunda that night. I think Carlson played for the Indians. We got to take part in that game. It was really cool. Okay. So last question I have, and that's about, before we get on to the actual Sens this season, is being drafted by the Leafs. Like, did you grow up a Sens fan and was drafted by the Leafs tough for you, and then getting to play in your hometown? In a quick synopsis, I guess, like, did you appreciate, I know you appreciate obviously being drafted, but did the Leafs make it a little tougher?
No, not at all. So a couple parts to that answer. Like, just happy to be drafted anywhere. And frankly, like, the fact that it was the Leafs was great because it's an original 6 team. It's, people are interested, you've got, like, obviously there's a ton of Leafs fans here in Ottawa. So, friends and family that you grew up with, immediate phone calls. Emails wasn't really a thing then. Text was barely a thing. But, all kinds of feedback on how great this is going to be playing for the Leafs. I think, I don't want to speak for you, Matt, but I think when you get to that level, just to be drafted in the NHL is such an honor.
100%.
That it doesn't really matter where you go. And I think by that time you've kind of realized, like, someone's going to pay me to play hockey. I don't really care who it is. Happy to be there. So I did grow up a Sens fan. People ask me that now too. Are you a Sens fan? Like, I guess so, because I follow the Sens closer than anybody else. I want them to do well. There's obviously a connection to the group, but I'm a fan of hockey. Like, I'll bounce around. Like, I love watching the Colorado Avalanche. I love watching the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, I want to see highly skilled, nice goals, smart play. So even when the Sens are playing the Leafs, like, Austin Matthews scores a beautiful goal, I'll jump up out of my chair. And it's like, that's not what a fan does, but I don't know. I'm just a fan of hockey, fan of good hockey, I guess. So I was a Doug Gilmour fan when I was a kid. Then I was a Wade Redden fan. I went to a lot of Sens games. I'm a Sens fan, but I'm a fan of everybody, I guess.
I was the same way. Like, people ask, since you covered the Sens for so long, are you a fan? I'm like, I'm a fan of actually the people or the players, right? Like James Reimer and I are good buddies, and he's a former Toronto Maple Leaf. Like I still cheer for them, so I'll cheer for everybody that wherever they play, just to see them play well. I could care less if the Ottawa Senators really win the Stanley Cup. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. And if Colorado won, I'd be just as happy. Like I'm with you on that. It's just watching good hockey and seeing good people succeed.
Yeah, and selfishly, it's like being an Ottawa resident my entire life. Like it's great when the Sens are good. It's positive. Like that 2017 run, I had just retired. I was doing some radio stuff. That was a blast. Like there wasn't much more fun than that. And then, the way things have gone the last couple of years, it sucks. It sucks to be in a market where the team isn't doing well, where there's constant drama and tension and all that stuff. Like you want it to go well. So yeah, I root for the Sens. I mean, the path that they're on right now, and where they're going to be at in 2 to 3 years, like that's encouraging. That's exciting for me. But I don't live and die by it by any stretch.
Yeah. You talk about the little bit of state of flux with this team. Let's get right to it. I'm going to bring up Brady Tkachuk right off the top because, well, hey, why not? It seems to me, and guys, you played, so you understand contract negotiations better than anybody. Suddenly, the script has been flipped on Brady Tkachuk, and now fans are starting to be upset with him, saying he's greedy, that, oh, how can you, if they're offering you 8 over 8 years, why aren't you doing this, and why aren't you signing? Can you guys fathom the flipping of the fans to now be, I guess, a little upset with Brady Tkachuk? Meth, I'll start with you.
Well, yeah, what we've learned, and Belzy and I can definitely relate to this as far as what happens when greedy athletes start asking for more money, right? And we've gone through this with lockouts where you're never really going to get any sympathy when there are dollar signs involved and professional athletes. That's just the nature of the beast. People will start off sympathizing with you a little bit, especially a player like Brady. And then eventually they start to get very impatient and frustrated. And inevitably things start to fall apart a little bit. And you start to get a little bit of maybe a very vocal minority of people, especially on Twitter, where they'll start kind of voicing their displeasure towards a player when things aren't going well and negotiations go south. So I think ultimately Brady still has everybody on his side for the most part. I think it's just more of a frustration right now where they want to see him in there in the lineup. And I can only imagine what it's like if you're a player holding out. I've never had to do that. Belzy, I don't think you have either, right? So I can imagine that being a player sitting back and watching these games at home as training camp is progressing and not getting in those reps with your teammates, I think there is a bit of guilt that starts to kind of seep in a little bit. But I mean, we know how this family works, and Keith is a pretty tough negotiator when he played as well. So Brady's got a lot of people on his side. And the one last thing I will say, because again, I am a fan of the Ottawa Senators, as we all know, but at the end of the day, when you're done playing, the teams don't essentially really give a shit about you. I mean, you move on to the next players, and that's just the way it works. It's like that in all sports. So I commend a player for standing strong and going out there and trying to get paid and getting what he believes he is worth. And once he signs, all the fans that aren't happy with him, all this stuff will be gone out the window, and it'll be back to work and life as usual with the Ottawa Senators. So I think people just need to be patient. I got to think it's going to happen soon.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like, I mean, I'm always going to be on the player side, and your lifespan is so short. Your career is, it's finite. So get your money while you can. It would be a different thing. Like Brady is such a likable guy and such an important piece, and like he's the identity and the heartbeat of this team. And so it's frustrating that he's not in camp. And we all know that when you miss camp, you miss time at the start of the season. It takes a little bit of time, and I don't want to say that we're going to end up writing off this year for Brady Tkachuk, but like he's not going to be the same guy, for the first 10 games of the season, 15 games of the season, whatever it is. So that's a little bit frustrating, but I never fault a player. And Matt, to your point, like I absolutely never held out. I was never in a position where that was even an option. Like I'll take it. What's the offer? I got it. Like, there wasn't much negotiating on my end. But you know what? Like it's such a difficult situation, and I applaud Brady for standing his ground. I mean, who knows what we've seen, some of the stuff that's come out about, what the team has offered, what the player, you never know. You have no idea what's going on in those negotiations. And I think that, having Hughes and Pettersson sign last week, his skating buddies the last couple of weeks, like this just gets tougher and tougher for Brady, and the pressure tightens. it's going to be interesting to see where it goes, because I don't think Brady can hold tight. I don't think the Sens can. Like, I think you have to get this guy signed and into camp sooner than later.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
And most importantly, I just wanted to add to that, Wally, really quickly, just because there's everyone's talking about structure, and Belzy's nailed it. Nobody really knows exactly what's being offered. The negotiations have been so tight and so well kept behind the scenes that we can only speculate, right? And people are like, well, is it signing bonus? Is it just term and structure? I feel like if they're just a couple $100,000 off here on the AAV, that it should get done. So there's obviously something else at stake here, and we don't know what that is. And we won't know probably until at least everything starts to come out and leak out. But again, they've held their ground so well that we can only speculate. And I don't think it's very fair to be blaming either side right now. I think it's fair to be frustrated and get angry maybe collectively with both sides, but don't just pin this on Brady. That's all I'm going to say to the fan base listening right now.
There's no pressure point right now, and that's the problem. They haven't started the season, so there's no games missed. So until there's actually more of a pressure point, then I think they don't have the real, like, Brady can still hold out to go, I want this in the contract.
Yeah, I think the interesting part too is, like, a couple of weeks ago when that came out about what the Sens offer was, or rumored offer was, like, that's here, like, pressure's back on you, Tkachuk camp. Like, we made a pretty fair offer, and that helps to kind of flip the script. Like, that's where some of the frustration, or some of the, Meth, as you said, the trolls or the vocal minority or whatever it is on Twitter, that, well, come on, like, look what's been offered to him. Like, he's not even worth that much money. Like, there's so many intangibles with Brady Tkachuk that Svechnikov, Landeskog, like, some of these guys, there's so many other things that Brady does, and his value, not just on the ice, but in the community here, selling jerseys with the fan base, all of that stuff. I don't know how you measure that in a negotiation, but it's real.
Exactly.
It's tangible. You got to pay for that.
Yeah, and you nailed it right there, Belzy. And I hate the Svechnikov comparison. It's ridiculous. I mean, they're two completely different animals, and it's an entertainment business, right? Is Brady Tkachuk not entertaining? Like, he's going to bring fans into the building. I'm going to be much more inclined and excited to watch these games when I know Brady's playing, and that's the effect that he has in this community and in the organization.
Does his holding out tarnish his image, or the fact that he should be given the captaincy? And I'll say that as players to you guys in the room, anybody care that he's not there?
I would say in the room, no, not one bit. I think players have each other's backs. I think that that it wouldn't be a problem for me whatsoever. You know what? Go get what you're worth. It sucks that we're missing our best forward. I was going to say best player. That's another debate, but our most important player, I would say. But as to whether it tarnishes his reputation or legacy or whatever it is down the road, depends how long he holds out for. Like, right now, if he was to sign and he was, on the opening night roster, played against the Leafs next Thursday, no problem at all. This is all forgotten and swept under the rug. If he sits out a season, oh boy, yeah, big time.
Yeah, it's bang on. And didn't Kyle Turris went through something like this with Phoenix, right? Where he missed quite a bit of time playing. Am I correct there? So, and I remember the fan base being very disgruntled with him, and we're talking about a small market. So again, I can only imagine what the effect would be here in Ottawa, but Belzy, again, you're bang on. I think if he's there in the starting lineup, this is a non-issue, and people are going to forget about it. But another thing, and that was another point you made earlier, you're not going to have the same Brady Tkachuk here, right away. Like, we all know what it's like to miss games, or even when you get injured in training camp and perhaps you might miss a week. You're behind the eight ball for a little while. It takes time because you haven't played all summer. You haven't played for months. Brady cannot replicate any of those reps, no matter who he's skating with. I'm sorry, but you just don't get it until you start playing exhibition games, and certainly until you start playing regular season games. So it's going to be very difficult for him, but he's not overly a flashy guy. I think that he can go out there and he can stick to his hard-nosed game right off the bat when he gets into that lineup and signs, and he'll be hard to play against at net front. I saw him a month and a half ago. He's huge. Like, he's really filled out up top too. So I can't imagine being a D-man in today's NHL and having to face a guy like him. It's going to be very difficult. So I think it's safe to say we can all agree here. We just want to get this done really quickly so we can stop talking about it.
Well, by the way, you've actually mentioned Kyle Turris. Let's not forget Alexei Yashin, who sat out a whole season. over
Good point.
his mom not getting paid by the NAC and wanting a new contract negotiated. Anyway, that really
that's a
went well.
tough comparison. Yashin and Brady Tkachuk. Who's more liked in Ottawa? Anyway.
Well, I bit my tongue on that one because yes, there was a player who sat out for a year, and we saw how that worked out for him, reputation-wise and legacy-wise.
Yeah. Anyway, but I will say, Belzy, when he came back at the end of that year, he had ended up scoring, I can't remember the total, but around 30 goals, if I'm not mistaken. They were back to cheering Alexei Yashin by the end of that season for helping them to try and win hockey games. So while they were mad as hell at the beginning, as things turned, as soon as you help win, they're going to cheer.
But legacy, how's he remembered?
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Like, I mean, it's a black mark on his name, on his reputation, on his career. Because in the short term, sure, just show up and play and contribute. Great. But, when you talk about people 20, 30 years from now, it's selfish, like all the negative connotation that, look, he sat out for a year, left his teammates high and dry, whether that was the case or not at the time. And there's certainly different circumstances and different personalities. But, that's what Alexei Yashin carries around with him now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. And being captain and being a Hart Trophy finalist, like you want obviously your best player to be in the lineup, and that one really stings. All right, let's move on. Sensory Overload brought to you by BEI, Bonisher Excavating Inc., BonisherExcavating.com for all your rental needs in the Ottawa Valley, helping to shape the Ottawa Valley. As we look through the first 4 preseason games by the Ottawa Senators, we'll play tonight against the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll get to that in a sec. The Sens 2-2 so far. Belly, what has stood out to you, if anything, so far this young preseason?
Well, I think it's kind of similar to the last couple of years in that we talk about the young guys. And, last year it was Norris and Batherson. This year, to me, it's Pinto and Formanton. It was... you listen to AM radio, you listen to the pundits and everybody speak, prior to the season, it was, Shane Pinto, that's a lot to ask out of a young player and first year pro and all that. Look at the way the kids played. Like, play speaks for itself. I mean, I cannot imagine a scenario where he's not on the opening night roster. And Alex Formanton, for a guy who, a young player still, and over the last couple of years, it's been, his ceiling's probably a third-line player, a penalty killer, a guy that gets in there and agitates. He's never going to score. Pretty nice start to camp. I think that you've seen that it's made it. He's played himself onto the team. He's played himself into a position where, look at this, we got to play this guy in the top 6 now. With the hole that Brady's left, he fits right in, slides right in, and he's contributed. 9 points in the game the other night for that line. I think it's, again, just the way that this has been built over, a couple of years of pain and going through it, is now starting to pay dividends. You've got, a ton of young talent that is just going to, push itself into the lineup here.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree with those 2 points, especially Pinto right now. The talk leading up to camp was, is he ready? And DJ was very vocal that he was going to go with Tierney as your 2 center. And I think most of us who watched him play, assuming that he was going to come back into camp in shape, which we all know he did, he's a machine, that he was just going to continue on with that. And he's proven. I don't think there's even a question now. And the one point I wanted to make to that, Belzy, was that the game is so different now. Like when you and I played, the average age, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was more common to see guys in their 30s playing in the NHL, and they were the heart and soul cornerstone pieces of the team. And now the game is young. So, you need legs. And if you can't keep up and you can't keep pace, your team's going to struggle. And you need guys like Pinto. Yes, he's young, and he's, would you like to see him develop a little more? I don't know that you need to anymore. And I know Mike Johnson made a really good point last week when we spoke to him, in that he's not relied on for the points right now necessarily, or just the points, I should say. He can kill penalties. He's very responsible defensively. And if he's going to improve on draws, I don't see an issue here. And then to answer the question, I think another focus point for me was the D-core and Brandstrom and all the chatter about this. And it's so divided. I'm still looking today, and there are a lot of people trying to convince other pundits and hockey analysts that are projecting the lineups that Brandstrom should still be in this lineup. I'm still so torn on this. I don't think he's knocked the door down. I don't think he's really made a strong enough case for himself to stay in this lineup full time, but it's a dogfight back there. You got guys like, even I would add Del Zotto in that mix still. I don't know that Del Zotto has cemented a second a second line spot on this team. I just don't know yet. I don't know that his legs are there. I know he's changed his game a little bit and he's more of a defensive sound player, but I mean, you look at guys like Methot right now that have been moving pretty well. Brandstrom might be just as effective as Del Zotto. And then Josh Brown's been very, in my opinion at least, been pretty solid back there in camp. And people weren't really talking about Holden very much. I like Nick Holden, and I think he's another guy that you can rely on, and you could probably play him on that second pairing. So again, I don't want to go on for too long here, but I think tonight's going to be a very important test to see how Del Zotto looks, and it's a big night for Methot and Holden. I think if those two play fairly well, I'm looking at this graph right now, I like Methot and Holden above Del Zotto and Zaitsev. To me, that's your number 2 pairing. So we'll see. I'm going to keep a close eye on all those guys, particularly on defense, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Matt, I think your point about Brandstrom, I just want to jump on that real quick because if Erik Brandstrom wasn't traded for Mark Stone, do you think we'd be having these conversations, or would he just be a first-round pick who's not quite ready yet? Exactly. I think it's as simple as that. It's Brandstrom is I don't want to say given more of an opportunity, but more is expected from him because he's the guy that they gave that came back in the Mark Stone deal. He's got to play. He has to play at some point.
Yep.
But I don't think he's there yet.
Yeah, I agree. And it doesn't, and to add to that even more, I think, especially if we're trying to figure out as far as projections go, he's not a DJ Smith type of player, right? Like I think at least with Methot, he's a little more consistent in his own zone. He's not losing assignments. Like that other night for me, I watched Brandstrom. Again, I was outside of town and I was maybe drinking a little bit at this wedding that I was at, but I caught some of the game. And I mean, there were some defensive lapses that actually caused and ended up in the back of his own net. So if that's happening in preseason, what the hell do you think it's going to look like in the regular season, right? So I just, when you're in a position like this, and Belzy, I know you know what I'm talking about. If you're a fringe guy, you have to knock the door down. Like you have to go in there and stand out, especially in the preseason. And that's where this conversation ends. He just hasn't done that. And you can't make a case for it until he goes out there and shows that he won't be a liability in his own zone.
I want to go back to the top line for a second. It used to be, and we'll get to Nick Paul in a sec, but at the start they were talking about, we're going to put Nick Paul in Brady Tkachuk's spot along with Norris and Batherson. Now it's Alex Formenton. Can Alex Formenton do the job in that spot in the regular season? Because both of you know the preseason is, and we've talked about this before, is not the same as the regular season. Is Alex Formenton a top line player right now in the National Hockey League?
He's a top line player on this team. I don't know about, you look around the league and some of the other top lines, like given where the Senators are at with missing number 7 on the left side, you got to fill the hole. And who is the best option for that? I think that it's what Meth just talked about. It's knocking down the door in training camp. And Alex Formenton has come in and done that. I think that Nick Paul was probably the safe choice. Fill him in there, Mr. Reliable, Swiss Army knife. He can do everything. But there's a ceiling there, right? Like Nick Paul isn't going, like Nick Paul's scoring and the way that he creates offense in a lot of cases is on his own. Like whether it's on a forecheck, whether it's, a great shot, like the goal he scored the other night was just that's a Nick Paul goal. It's kind of out of nowhere. It's not generating in the offensive zone. It's not using your line mates, tic-tac-toe, that kind of thing. I like what Formenton brings to that line because to me, what we saw last year and what we've seen here at the start of training camp is Norris and Batherson both have a lot of playmaking ability. Like that, they can both score, they can both put the puck in the back of the net, but they're good passers. They're creative with one another. And I think that if you put a guy on the wing like Alex Formenton, who's got, that blazing speed that backs defensemen off, it creates more room. Like I know as a defenseman playing in the league that it was like, if you had that little speedster, you had to be a step back or 2 steps back and your gap wasn't as good. And so that opens up room for the more creative players to make plays. And so I like the fit right now. Is he a top 6, top 3 forward in the National Hockey League? That might be a bit of a stretch, but I really do like the fit on the line right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this top, I'm going to ask you both as defensemen in the National Hockey League. These two top lines, you got Formenton, who's 22, Norris is 22, Batherson's 23, Stützle's 19, Pinto's 20, and then you got the old man Connor Brown at 27. But if you are defending these top 2 lines and all these guys are 23 and younger, is there what's the concern, or is there more of a concern because they're young and energetic, or do you think you can handle them better because they're young and inexperienced? Belly, I'll start with you on just how you handle those top two lines.
Well, I never had to handle top two lines. That didn't happen
I knew
to me
this
in
was
my
coming,
National Hockey League career. Don't worry about that.
If you were out there
Give
by
me the
mistake.
plumbers. I played a lot against George Laraque in my NHL career. Like that's the guys that I got. So I was going back, getting pasted through the glass and hoping that I could get up quick enough to get up ice and create an offensive chance. You know what? I think that the way that the game is now, Matt, you said it earlier, talking about, young players and older players. Like my first couple of training camps with the Toronto Maple Leafs, it was like Eric Lindros, Owen Nolan, Joe Nieuwendyk, Ron Francis. Like these guys were all 35 plus. Like that doesn't happen anymore. There's how many guys? Maybe 5 guys in the league left that are over 35 years old.
Not a lot.
It just happens that half of them play for the Toronto Maple Leafs or did last year. I think that speed kills, right? Like the game now is all about speed and just rolling it over and pressure. And so you can put young kids in that position now, and players are so much smarter now than they were coming into the league. It's like the way that the game is approached at the junior hockey level, NCAA, like there's video. Like we didn't do video when I played in the OHL. Like that wasn't a thing, and so you weren't taught the right way to play. It was learn on the fly, pick it up, watch this defenseman, watch the way that he plays. Like the way that kids, I say kids sound like the old man, but the way that young players do it now, like they are so much further ahead when they turn pro than we were. And so, you know what, more can be expected, more can be given to them, more responsibility, more expectation. I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I was just going to add to that, Wally, just with regards to defending those top lines. If I again, and I'm not good because Belsy just about covered everything.
Yeah.
When I was with Ottawa, and I think it was roughly when Marner and Matthews came in and started playing together in training camp, and we played a couple exhibition games out there. My biggest thing that I remember was the speed, and all of a sudden, like these two young guys are literally controlling the game, and it was like it was a mind blowing experience because I was always used to looking out for those veterans that were just that much more skilled and maybe a little bit more seasoned, obviously. So they knew the tricks out there, but it's all about speed now. And so I hate the argument, well, he's too young. He needs to be groomed up a little bit. That might apply for some defensemen. But when you see a player like Pinto come into the NHL and able to play both ways and not being a liability defensively, he's always in the right spots. Like that argument is just stupid. And to me, it's not effective. I think if I'm looking at these lines right now, all I can think is, and I'm going to echo what Belsy said is, oh boy, like my gap's going to suck tonight. It's not going to be very good. They're going to gain entry most of the time with control of the puck, but I'm going to try to keep them in front of me and make sure the shots are coming from the outside and hope they don't get rebounds. And that's how I'm going to approach it. And, gap's going to be tough. I'm going to go back to the bench. Coach is going to give me shit every time I get off the ice that my gap's not good. But at least I know that the play's in front of me. And that's how I handled it when I played. Guys like Crosby, certain players, you know what? Try to shoot the puck through me. You're going to gain entry. Maybe my Corsi won't look very good on paper because they're getting shots on net, but I don't care because we're still going to probably win the game. They're all going to be in front of me. I'm going to be okay. So again, it's a young man's game now, and that's really all that matters.
So Matt, I just want to ask you quick, Wally, sorry to hijack here, but like you were looking at the Ottawa Senators from last year, who was the toughest forward to play against on that team, do you think?
Oh,
I got my answer. Easy. Like I think Tim Stützle is frightening as a defenseman, like with that speed and that playmaking ability.
Right. Like you mean one-on-one. Yeah.
Who like picking up steam inside his own blue line. And you've got to gap up and take that rush back. Like, I don't want any part of Tim Stützle.
No.
And,
he's shifty,
Alex Formenton is like that too. Yeah. 18 years old. It's not some experienced guy in the middle of the ice. It's the guys with speed to burn.
Yeah. And exactly. So we look at this lineup and you have a player like Tierney, which I believe there's definitely room for him in this lineup. Let me rephrase that. This is an indictment towards Tierney, but you look at a player like Formenton, and even with your comparison to Paul and how they just switched with that, I mean, your top line needs to be fast. and it needs to be reasonably skilled. And he complements those two guys perfectly because he's going to be able to retrieve pucks. And if they do have to dump pucks, he's going to be first there all the time. D-man's going to be backed up. That's a no-brainer and a brilliant move by the coaching staff. So well done there. And Nick Paul, you can move him up and down the lineup anywhere you like. It doesn't make a difference. So again, for a replacement for Brady, Formanton's your guy. I like it there. And he's making a good case that he belongs. So we'll see how that plays out when Brady gets back.
Yeah, your comment about no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Wally. I was going to say your comment about staying in front of a defenseman, you get back to the bench and you're going to eat shit from the coach because your gap wasn't bad. My feeling on that was always like, at least I'm not a highlight reel. At least I'm not getting blocked going wide. Like, shoot it through me, and if I screen the goalie, it's still his fault. He could have made the save. Like, it ain't me. I just don't want to be the guy put on the poster.
It drove me nuts because when we played, there would be times where, because as a defenseman, when you get to the NHL and Belsey, obviously you know this too, you got to be smart, to a degree, and you're not going to play every player exactly the same. So when coaches were like, you do not let that line get across the blue line, I'm like, are you kidding me? We're playing against, Austin Matthews. They're going to get the freaking blue line. Like, sometimes they're going to get it, and that's okay because you got Marner going 100 miles an hour up the middle, feeding whoever he wants. I mean, it's just the way it is. So you can't play everybody the same. And so when coaches would preach cap like that and yell at you when you got off the ice, it drove me nuts. And I'd be guilty of talking back sometimes because all I could think was like, okay, put on another pairing. Let's see how that other pairing does against that line. It'll be a freaking highlight reel, right? And so you got to play it smart, and you have to understand that top lines are top lines for a reason. They're going to create opportunities whether you like it or not. So the best defense sometimes is just keeping them in front of you. Make sure you're between them and the net, and you're going to be okay.
Okay, so here's my last question on this top two lines. Should you put Tim Stützle on the top line and Formanton with Pinto and Connor Brown? Do you need to have a defensive guy with Norris and Batherson as more than Stützle? Or, as you remember, you guys always used to protect a forward. You'd have one defensive forward on a line. Can you flip the two? Can you put Formanton and Stützle on different lines?
I like the chemistry on the lines right now. Like, I think of Connor Brown and Tim Stützle for whatever reason. Like, they just work real well together. Is it because Connor Brown's so responsible defensively and so good, on up and down the ice? I don't know. But you take Stützle off the second line and you put him up front with Norris and Batherson. I think you're hurting both lines there. Like, I think you hurt the second line for sure. You take away some of that, Formanton, while I don't know if we qualify him as a defensive forward at this point, but with that speed and that responsibility and PK and that kind of thing, I think that he adds something up on that first line on the defensive side of the puck. And I think that Stützle has done just fine with playing with Connor Brown and with Pinto. I mean, let's see what that looks like. I think that similar to someone we were talking about earlier, like a great players just generating offense on their own. Like Tim Stützle does that, right? He just creates things on his own with his speed, with his hands. You throw Shane Pinto into that mix, what's that going to look like? The Norris Batherson combination is great. Throw Tkachuk in there, it's even better. Well, let's see if this Pinto Stützle thing works out well, because you might have a two-headed monster there.
Yeah, and to your first point, it's just chemistry, Wally, right? So why would you break any of these lines up that have clearly seen some success together? I mean, it's the no-brainers just to switch out the one guy. So Brady's not in there. Fill that little spot with somebody who you feel is best suited. Don't mess with any of the other lines. Especially that second line. I mean, I couldn't agree more. The chemistry that Stützle and Brown have right now, you're not really going to get with anybody else. Keep them together. Pinto's going to fit in really nicely if he continues his play. I would not even touch that line. Leave it as it is. And I mean, the play from Formanton with those other fellas in camp so far has proven that it's just the right fit at the moment.
Okay, we'll wait to see how that plays out. They're going to play together tonight, so I look forward to the Leaf game. By the way, Shane Pinto, there was concern about his faceoffs because after last year, he is 20 for 33 so far in the preseasons, over 60-some%. So
pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see how that continues to play out. All right, up next, the work of art, Artem Zub, if you will, brought to you by Whitewater Beer. Of course, our good friends at Whitewater. They've come out with a new Killaloo Surprise. It's a beaver tail inspired beer. We're going to taste test this a little bit later in the show and see how this goes. By the way, you can get 15% off using the Wally and Methot coupon at shopwhitewater.ca. Of course, Whitewater beer is brewed by friends for friends. So speaking of friends, Artem Zub, the legend, I think we should call him by now. He's mythical status. Are we overselling Artem Zub by any stretch of the imagination? Both of you have played a defensive role in the National Hockey League. Can you tell me if we're making a big deal, or is it just because he's a guy that never talks and we know nothing about him? Brendan Bell.
Yeah, I think that certainly adds to the mythical status. Like he's like this unicorn where you don't get anything. And the stuff that came out last year about like he's a musician too. He's learning languages, all kinds of stuff. Like it was great because it was just enough to keep the kind of legend going, or like the myth of like this guy's wild. Like he's into all kinds of things. And I think that it's just been his play though. Like his play was so good last year, and a surprise too, right? Like typically you get these guys that come over that are older players who have played in Europe, and it's like, oh, he was the MVP of the KHL or the best defenseman in the Finnish league, and he's going to come right over and step right in. Never works out that way. They get 15 or 20 games in, and it's before you know it, ooh, the game's too physical, game's too fast, ice is too small, whatever it is. But Zub just quietly went about his business and got better, every night. He came in really good, and then was just like, there was no hiccups. Like he was steady. Yeah. He was probably the most consistent defenseman last year. And you don't get that from a rookie player. And a guy that, obviously has some professional experience playing in the KHL, but he's still a relatively young guy at 26. So, I just think he's stable. And in a lot of cases, what more do you want from a defenseman? A number 3, really, right? I mean, he's probably going to end up playing a top pair defenseman this year, but I see him as a number 3 defenseman. He's a guy that's certainly in your top 4. Can he carry a pair on his own? Probably not, but he's a great partner for your superstar. There's other guys on this call that made a pretty good career doing that.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could disagree with Belzy a little more. I'd love to have a good old fashioned argument going, but again, it's exactly what he just said. I think he comes over here and more importantly, he's in the new age NHL. He's your perfect stay at home D-man because he's not that big, but he skates and moves very well. He's still incredibly defensively sound. Obviously that's his bread and butter, but more importantly, he doesn't handle the puck like a grenade, right? It gets to his stick. He's not inclined to just shovel it up the wall or up the glass. Not that a lot of D-men really do that anymore. I think the game's obviously evolved, but his passes almost, well, not all the time, but very often are on point. He's got a lot of poise under pressure in the D zone. He complements Shabbat and anybody else he happens to play with so well. So again, it's a case where you've just got this very good defensively sound D-man that you can rely on. And it's just such a breath of fresh air because they've gone after some free agents as of late. We all know the ones they picked up last year. They couldn't really handle the puck very well. He's a much better puck handler than Zaitsev. So again, it's to me, he's the ultimate defensive D-man, especially on this team right now, and there's no denying that. And I'm hoping and praying it works out very well with Shabbat. I think it will because, I mean, what a tandem that'll be. If you can fill out the rest of your roster and get some reliability out of that second and third pairing, to me, that's the ultimate D partner, at least available right now for Thomas Shabbat. And I'm thinking it's going to work out very well for both of them.
Interesting. By the way, he just celebrated his 26th birthday yesterday, so happy birthday to Artem Zub. Brings us up to a web poll question that we've got on right now on our chat, and that is the greatest Sens Russian defenseman of all time: Igor Kravchuk, Anton Volchenkov, Sergei Gonchar, or Artem Zub. Now, I know you're not shocked. Oh, Volchenkov and Zub are now tied at 36% with Gonchar at 27%, and Kravchuk, shockingly, 0. Clearly, we have a younger group online. Would you guys pick? Who would you pick among all those as the greatest Russian defenseman that played in a Sens uniform?
Oh, it's easy. Meth? No doubt about it. Number 24, Volch. It's got to be. As much him and Philly were so good together for so long. Heart and soul guy, like blocking pucks with his face, just absolutely anything for his team. And couple that with his off-ice persona and personality and horrible mastery of the English language. He's one of my all-time favorite teammates. Like some of the stuff that would come out of his mouth was the best. Him and Antoine Vermette were best buddies, right? And both of them barely spoke English. Like Volch would learn his English from Verm. And
Oh,
so
man.
Verm would teach Volch, you know, like they on the road, like they never left their hotel room. They were just the room service and movies guys. And Verm would teach Volch English. And it was wild, some of the stuff that Volch would come up with about, you know, like he had ground beavers in his backyard one day and they were making holes everywhere and he couldn't figure out how to get rid of the ground beavers. And we were like, what? Well, groundhogs, but the loose translation was, you know, and the flying mice in his attic. He had all kinds of stuff that he couldn't get rid of. And it was all from Verm, you know, like he was so much fun. So he's easily my favorite Russian defenseman.
Yeah, and I never had a chance to play with Volchi, but I think with my pick, I'd probably go and with Zub, of course, he's only played a year here. Like I can't go with a player that has not a ton of experience playing on the team. So I played with Gonch. I don't know that that's the right pick, but I just remember how he was, and again, he was towards the end of his career when we had him, but like he lived in the worst possible place proximity wise to Canada. And that was on, you know, east of Ottawa in Rockcliffe. So there'd be like a snowstorm and we'd be at the arena and it, you know, the team meeting is like maybe an hour before the game. So everyone's been at the rink at this point for already over an hour. And again, Gonch isn't there yet. So we're all thinking like, where's Gonch? He's not at the rink. Just rolls in a little after the meeting, sometimes during a meeting, still in his suit, because there was obviously a snowstorm and he's coming, you know, from Rockcliffe, Ontario, which is an hour through a snowstorm. But like, it didn't break stride, right? He was just very casual, very respected. The coaches never said anything to him. He was allowed to get away with pretty much anything he wanted. And he'd go out there in the game and play that very smooth, casual style, barely warmed up. And that was the kind of player he was. And he was very mysterious off the ice. You never really saw him anywhere. So I'd have to say Gonch only because it was a very fun experience to be able to play with a player like that.
Okay, wait a sec. Rockcliffe or Rockland?
Like
Rockland,
so
Ontario?
No, Rockcliffe,
okay.
just east of downtown where Alfie lives right now. But anybody, as Belzy can agree with, who plays for the Ottawa Senators, driving to the rink in traffic down that 417 knows you better not be east of town. Like you're going to have to be either in Canada, Westboro, or anywhere in between. But he decided he wanted to live out there, and he was late almost all the time. So yeah.
Okay, I need to quickly move on because I'm way behind on where I should be. And that is Friday. I don't know if you guys saw, but Zub did his shootout attempt. He scored, and everybody was excited to see him do as a defenseman scoring in the shootout, which brought me to thinking of who's actually done a shootout as a defenseman who's played for the Ottawa Senators. Erik Karlsson had the most. He was 5 for 18. Thomas Chabot, 0 for 2. Patrick Wierkosh, 0 for 2. Brendan Bell, 0 for 1. Cody Ceci, Mike Riley, David Roomblad, and Chris Weidman are the only Ottawa Senator defensemen to ever attempt a shootout. Brendan, do you remember yours against the Boston Bruins?
Oh, thanks for bringing it up, Wally. I like to say that I don't have regrets, and I try to live my life that way. That is one regret that I will always have, that I did not score in that shootout, because man, I loved the shootout. Like in my minor league career, I was always the first shooter. Like I was just good at shootouts. I was a shootout specialist. And so for years and years and years, like in the minors, I'd go like 8 for 9 on the year. One year I was 12 for 14. Like I had a crazy shootout record, 2 moves that worked all the time. And so that year, I was in Binghamton for 10 or 15 games at the start of the year, and I went 3 for 3 in the shootout. Corey Klusten was our coach. Come up to Ottawa, play most of the year. Craig Hartsburg gets fired. Corey Klusten comes up. We get into a shootout against the Boston Bruins at home. And I didn't even, like, Corey and I weren't buddies by any stretch of the imagination or anything, but he certainly had some experience with me in the shootout. So when we go to shootout, like in overtime, I was just hoping we got to the shootout. And so I look back and kind of like make sure that he can see me. And he goes, okay, you're up. Let's go. Let's see it. And I was like, thank God I get to do this. Like finally at home too, families in the building, you know, obviously my brothers and my dad, and that they know my shootout history and they're pumped. So I go in, make my move, and Tim Thomas of all people, right? Like very unpredictable, but this works. This move always works. And so I go in, fake forehand, open them up wide. I've got all the room in the world. I'm going to slide it 5-hole. and he kicks his heels back together and stops it on the goal line. And I was like, no, that's it. That's it. That's going to be my one shootout attempt in the NHL. Like, let alone if I play another 5 years, whatever it is. Like, if I get another 300 games in this league, I'm going to be 0 for 1 in the shootout for the rest of my career, because there's not a chance that I'm going to have a coach who's going to back me. And I'm like, I had him,
man.
and I 0 for 1 forever.
Hey, but at least you got to do it.
I did get.
I don't even know how.
And,
like, where do I? Go ahead. Sorry, Walt.
No, I've seen the I've seen the clip. Like, there's a YouTube clip. Dean Brown brought it out last year for something, and the boys at 1200 had a great laugh because Jack Edwards was on the call, and Brendan Bell is gonna shoot for the Senators. Okay, don't have a book on this guy.
Jack Edwards isn't biased at all, right? Like, he's not a biased announcer by any means, right?
Yeah, so they use that clip pretty regularly when I was on doing the pre and post game shows. But yeah, I always going to be 0 for 1.
And I recall literally turning down the opportunities like multiple times where, like in exhibition games, maybe the shootouts go on forever. Yep. I wanted no part of them because I just, do I need to state the obvious here? I mean, I couldn't handle a puck worth my life. So I never did it.
What if this was your thing?
What thing? What are you talking about?
You could be a shootout. What if you were a shootout specialist?
My best seasons in the NHL, I had 1 goal. I think 1 year I had 0. I mean, are you kidding me? But I'm a shootout specialist? No.
You could have been.
I could see you as the walk-in, like, top of the circle,
Clapper.
Big slap shot. Oh, yeah,
yes.
for sure. Yeah.
That would be the only option.
Yeah, off the inside of the goalie's leg or something like that, like just through his pad.
Yes.
Hard as you can. Not picking a corner. Just
no. Like, my eyes are closed and I'm just shooting the puck as hard as I can.
How exciting is it? And I know you're both defensemen, but when you're on the bench and you see, because it's rare, you see a D-man, unless you're super talented like Erik Karlsson or Thomas Chabot, taking a shootout attempt. Is there a lot of energy watching this transpire?
I always like seeing like the one-offs, right? So if I was on the bench and if I was on the Boston bench and I wasn't me, I would immediately be like, what's this all about? Who's this guy? There must be
he must have a special move.
Be something to this. Yeah, this is weird. Like, I remember the Merrick Malik goal, right? From years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
I remember being a kid and being so pumped that like a defensive defenseman is going in the shootout, and not only going in the shootout, but making a move like that. Like, to me, that was like the coolest thing ever. Like, Merrick Malik will go down in history for me. I'll never forget Merrick Malik. Like, 6'5", Czech defenseman, couldn't handle the puck to save his life. But remember that shootout goal?
Yeah. Well, he's on the highlight reel every year. Like, every time they go top 10 best shootout moves, he's on there. And and it's not just the goal; it's everything. It's the celly, like the air of confidence with the hand up. Yeah, like it was ridiculous. And he's almost making a mockery out of it, going through his legs. Right? It's like a big FU to everybody out there. So I'm a huge fan of that one as well. That was a great comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't supposed to go in.
No.
Right? Like, he was going to try that, and that was going to hit the goalie in the chest or go over the net or something like that, and it'd be a funny story in the dressing room afterwards.
Exactly.
Meth, I'm disappointed you turned it down. But anyway, we'll move on. I look forward to seeing perhaps Zub, or perhaps any other defenseman taking more shootouts. Into Matter of Fact, brought to you by sportsinteraction.com. Sportsinteraction.com is Canada's odds makers. Make sure you go see sportsinteraction.com/Wally and Methot. Get in on the action. Don't forget the season's going to start, and we're going to want you to be betting all the time with the Ottawa Senators, and they have lots of different kind of questions that come up. So make sure you get into sportsinteraction.com/Wally and Methot. All right, Matt Murray, his preseason debut, he allowed 2 goals, 27 shots. I think his save percentage is about .926 from that game. He's going to start tonight. He's expected to play the whole game. What do you guys think of Matt Murray's play? In a very small sample size, but based off of last year, it must be a positive sign, Brendan.
Yeah, you know what? I like Tale of Two Cities, obviously. Murray came in and struggled at the start. Everybody that was in the net for the first 25 games or so struggled last year. And then it flipped, right? And the further we got down the depth chart, the better guys played. And so whether it was a comfort level, an adjustment, whatever it was. Matt Murray was good, real good down the stretch last year. And, I think that, to me, that's the one big question mark with this team is, like, what you're going to get out of the forwards. What you're going to get out of the defensemen. How they're going to play every night. But is Matt Murray good enough and consistent enough, stable enough to be the backbone of this team? Because you're paying him to be that, right? And the Sens, I love the move when they went out and got Matt Murray. Like, you get a young guy who's got, sign him to a contract. He's going to be here long term. He's going to be the guy with this group. And last year just, kind of created more questions than anything of, well, can he really do this? It's such a fickle, finicky position that, there's more questions than answers there with me for Matt Murray. And I think that, starting the season strong will go an awfully long way to kind of alleviating some of that discomfort or uncertainty.
Yeah. And I think you got to remember he came in last year. There was no training camp. You go to a new organization. You don't get any reps in. There's no familiarity with anybody there. You're coming from a world-class organization where he's seen a lot of success, played very good hockey. And then you come in here, and I'm not going to name names, but they didn't have the best decor last year. Didn't have a ton of help. So mix that in. All these different variables play a huge part of that. And then obviously a couple bad goals go in here and there for the first little while. And, obviously not getting a ton of help. He's hung out to dry a little bit. It just crushes your confidence, right? As a goaltender, Belzy nailed it. It's such a finicky position. It's so mental. And goalies, as we all know, are a little odd for the most part. They've all got their little quirks. And again, I'm going to say this one more time, confidence. He's coming in now. He's getting his reps in. They're sheltering him to a degree, especially earlier on in camp. They didn't want to play him right away. He's getting tons of reps in, a lot of practice. He's getting to know the guys. Belzy also said, finished off the season pretty strong last year. Not a ton of hockey, but looked pretty good. Is that going to continue right now? I don't know. I think we can predict. We can have all our projections out there. To me, the biggest thing is the team in front of him going to play pretty well? Defensively, are they going to be sound and responsible? How's that decor going to look? I think if all those things are fairly consistent, you're going to get a much better player out of Matt Murray. You're going to get better production, and everybody's going to be pretty happy. I think all you really need from him right now is consistency. You don't need him to be lights out. You just want him to be average or a little above average. Give the team an opportunity to win as much as often. I'd like to say every night that he plays. That won't happen. There are going to be ups and downs. But I think if the team's playing a little bit with a little bit more structure, which we saw late in last year, and I'm assuming it's going to continue, he's going to be okay. So I think the confidence is there now. He's getting his reps in. There's training camp behind him. Things are going to be all right.
He did look different the other night in that there seems to be a little more comfort factor. So we'll see if that continues tonight in the game against the Leafs. Last topic, gentlemen. Lenny and the tweets. I wanted Lenny in the text, but he wasn't sending text, so I had to do that one. What do you guys make of Robin Lehner's Twitter storm, if you will, on Saturday? Talks a lot about, players given Ambien, not from doctors, but from training staff and benzodiazepines. I don't know how you say it.
Call them benzos.
I had it. All right, there we go. He said lots of stuff, and I don't know how much you guys have seen him after the Flyers, and I know he's talked about Jack Eichel and how he's being handled in Buffalo. Do you guys know that, do you believe in what he's saying to be accurate since you've been in the same kind of dressing rooms? Meth?
I'll go first.
Oh, you want me? Oh, yeah. See,
I don't know.
Yeah. You're asking two former players when we're both a little reluctant to answer that question. I think I'll go first. Right. That's fine. So, Belzy's hanging me out to dry here. I'm getting.
But here's the thing. Okay, but wait a sec, Matt. So here's the thing, though. Everybody's saying it's been going on for years, and people have spoken out, but nobody's done anything. So now that he's spoken out a little bit more, people feel that he should be kind of supported a little bit because they all know that this is transpiring. If you get my point.
Yeah. Okay. So this is tough because you can't paint a broad brush over every organization. Everyone's different. Right. And I will say this, I'll preface it before I get into my point. The league has changed dramatically since Belzy and I played. Certainly since Beller and I came into the NHL, it's a lot different right now. When I first got into the league, yes, everything was much more available. It was a lot easier to get your hands on Ambien. We played in Columbus, for example. And when I played in Columbus, we were in the Western Conference, us in Detroit. We're an Eastern time zone team. playing in the West. So as you can imagine, our sleeping patterns were just out of whack all the time. We'd land from a divisional game. We'd be back in Columbus at 2 a.m., landing. So that was very difficult. So, any kind of thing that, and of course, cannabis products and all that stuff wasn't really a thing then. It's still, I think they're getting there now. But when it came to sleep aids, that was a big one. And it was easy to get them. If you wanted them, you'd have them. And there weren't a ton of questions asked. That was 15 years ago. So are there still teams, practicing these things? And is it still easily available? I would assume probably, and I'm not going to discount what Lehner's saying because he's incredibly honest and I respect the hell out of that. And I think a lot of his comments resonated with a lot of people. Certainly with the opioids, that's a problem. And we know it can become a very big problem if you start using them regularly and you're not weaned off properly. And again, that's subjective to the player, different personalities. Some are more addictive than others. But again, having more of an educated background in this is important. I think we, as players, you need to be educated. I think as training staff, you need to be responsible. I'm stating obvious cliche stuff right now, but it's true. And I do agree with Robin that it's still a problem with a lot of teams. It needs to be rectified and addressed. And I don't know how you do that and where you begin. You start with releasing more statements at the beginning of training camp and you go from there. But I mean, I don't know how else you do it, but I do commend I do commend Robin for doing that. It's good to bring light to this stuff because we've seen that it's been a big issue with a lot of players, particularly retired players.
Yeah, you know what, I saw it over the weekend and thought like good for Lenny for bringing it up. I mean, he's obviously a guy who's been very forthcoming with his mental health stuff. Has dealt with addiction stuff in the past, and Matt, to your point, like 20 years ago, it was a lot different. Like it wasn't to the point where, you walk into a locker room and in any trainer's room, and Wally, you've seen this stuff where they've got the jar of Tylenol, they've got the jar of Q-tips, they got the jar of Band-Aids, there wasn't a jar of Ambiens. There wasn't a jar of benzos. There wasn't any of this stuff like that. It's certainly accessible. I played in Phoenix. Ambien was a regular thing,
more so in the States,
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. And again, like playing in Canada, our trips weren't that bad. Going out west, you're only doing it for once or twice a year at best, and it's gradual. So I don't, playing in the minors too, it was a thing. Riding the buses overnight, and some of the travel that we went through. It was, if guys had sleeping issues and if guys had, if there were things, that stuff was available for sure. You had to seek it out a little bit. It was certainly easier to access than it would be in the real world. If you wanted to do some of that stuff now, you'd have to go to a doctor, get a prescription, all that. It was more like you go talk to the trainer and the trainer said, I haven't slept in a couple of days and I'm having a hard time. Is there any chance you can, get something from the doctor for me next Friday night at the game? Yep, no problem at all. Like that, it's that easy, right? So there is still a bit of a buffer, but I don't think that any of that stuff it wasn't tracked or, how many did we give you last week? And do you still, you should have some left. And I don't know if there was a process in place. I'm sure that there is now. But that being said, I think that Lenny's comments the other day, let's talk about this. Let's put it out there. The thing that I didn't love was his comments about Philly and about Alain Vigneault. And where does that come from? What's that all about? He never played in Philly, didn't play for AV. Coaches don't walk around with a pocket full of Ambien or any drug or anything for that matter that they'll be handing out here and there. So there's some stuff that's kind of questionable to me, and I wonder where that came from. If that's word of mouth, if that's factual, if that's where is your information coming from there? But all in all, good for you for standing up. I wouldn't have the stones to do it. I was never at that point anywhere confident enough in my career that I'm going to put my hand up here because we got to change things. Good for Lenny for taking that on.
Yeah. And just to add to the Ambien thing, so if there are people listening and they're wondering, well, why are you guys taking Ambien? It's not just the travel. You got to remember that it's not that you're not just staying up late doing some work or crunching numbers in front of your computer. you're going to a game drinking a bunch of coffee and whatever kind of stimulant you could think of to get up for these games at 7:30 at night on the road. And sometimes you're taking pseudoephedrine and other pills. I don't know how many players are still taking that stuff, but players are taking all kinds of different stimulants to get up for these games because it's a grind when you're playing 82. And this isn't me saying, well, you need to sympathize and, blah, blah, blah. I'm not trying to go there and this isn't like, poor me, but when the game ends and you're still up on this high and you're all wired and it's like 11 p.m. and you got to get to bed because you got to get up in the morning. That was the normal thing to do. And it's hard to find holistic alternatives that can replicate those same effects. And I know there's arguments as well that when you're taking Ambien, you're not necessarily getting your REM sleep. And I'm acknowledging that. But again, like when I was playing in the playoffs and and I was with Ottawa, and I was trying to get to sleep and you're playing in these high stakes games in the third round of the playoffs, I'd take NyQuil or anything that would really kind of help me doze off because you're so wired and it's almost impossible to get down and try to relax. So those are issues that are still, I feel like being navigated through and there are still different alternatives that are finally now coming to light, but it's a messy landscape and it's hard to just point the finger at people because as a player, you're also responsible, right? Like some stuff is available. Hell, I'm retired. I can still go find stuff, I'm sure right now if I wanted to. And I know it's not good for my body, but I think as a player, you do have to accept a little bit of responsibility as well. So there's a fine line here. But again, having said all that, I like what Robin's doing because it is bringing to light some serious issues that are happening around the NHL, and not just the NHL, professional sports in general.
As long as, to start the discussion, I guess, becomes the most important part of all that, just to see if we can start to take better care of athletes. Because, Meth, you started at the beginning of the show saying, you know what? The organizations don't really care about us because we are just pieces of the puzzle for them to win hockey games. And
Sure.
I think that that's a very true statement. That you become commodities. And so I think
it's
that
like
the
any
players
business.
have to...
And
right.
Yeah, and we're not exclusive. It's not just athletes, right? Anybody working out there. I mean, there's always an end goal.
Sure.
And it's, to grow your business. And you've got pieces that help you do that. And if those pieces don't do the job, you're going to be gone and someone else is going to come in.
But you would also like to be taken much better care of.
Yeah. And if nothing else, it becomes part of the consciousness, right? Like Matthew, you were talking about, putting some of it back on the player. I absolutely agree. The culture is such that no, you take a shot, you take a pill, you take whatever to play. You see some of the stuff that Ryan Kessler has done over the last couple of years, and fan of Kess or not, he's been very vocal and very honest about, I've created a problem for myself. And I did that knowing what the effects would be later on. And I'd probably do it again. I know I would. Broken foot in the playoffs, shoot me up. Let's go. I'm going out there. Whatever it is, whatever you've got to do to play. And, part of that's a badge of honor. Part of that is the culture, whatever it is. But I would absolutely do it again. If I had an opioid addiction or something like that, I might be, I might have a different perspective on it now. But, as long as it's okay to have those conversations. It's okay to have those thoughts. It's okay to second guess, should I do this? Is this the right thing to do? Can I talk to a trainer about this? Can I talk to a doctor? Can I talk to a teammate? The more aware people become of this, people, players, trainers, staff, that we got to have these conversations. This can't just be, an uncomfortable thing that nobody talks about. It's got to be discussed.
Yep, that's it.
And speaking of discussion, Brendan, we got to let you go, but we appreciate you taking the time to stop by. We will have you back again because, as we can see, you are very much in the GM mode, and we need more of this. If you could become a capologist, that would be perfect.
Yeah, I'm good with numbers, not that good.
We'll talk to you soon, Brendan. Take care and appreciate you stopping by. Thanks, my friend.
Thanks, guys. That was a lot of fun.
There goes Brendan Bell, former Ottawa Senator, also a former CHL Defenseman of the Year. I can't imagine winning those kinds of honors to be selected from, I don't know how many teams there are, almost 60 CHL teams to be picked as the best defenseman. Has to be amazing in itself. Great stuff from Brendan Bell. Always enjoyed his insight. Meth, we're going to welcome in Craig into the show, who's been busy in the back doing all kinds of polls online.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. So,
hey guys.
Hi, buddy. How are you?
Hey, good. People liked your Lenny in the tweets. People liked it. I'm sure you saw that, obviously, but people liked your titles today.
I don't have any other life, so I just try to come up with some titles. I really wanted Lenny in the text, though. I thought that would have been so much better.
That would have been a good one.
Anyway. Okay, so guys, I promised at the beginning we would do a taste test of the Killaloo surprise. And it is afternoon, Meth, so now you have to we're gonna
the argument was like, because I love white water, it's all I drink at home, but I just did a big workout, so this will be my recovery, I guess.
My concern was it was 11 in the morning, but now it's afternoon, so I feel a little less.
See,
you can make an argument.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right,
and so
cheers.
By the way, this has it's a spiced beer, recreates the familiar flavors of cinnamon and sugar, sprinkled atop warm dough, a little hint of lemon. Okay.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
Oh. Yeah.
It's a seasonal, right? So I feel like this kind of beer is perfect for the fall when the weather starts to turn a little bit, winter. It's a good beer.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
I'm not getting tons of the cinnamon and sugary and stuff. It just kind of tastes like
I don't feel like I'm eating a beaver tail.
I was worried it was going to be super syrupy or something.
Yeah, and with the whitewater beers, it's not just going on. I don't know if they're paying enough for this, but they but all their beers, even their citrus ones, they're not too aggressive when it comes to that sweet, right? Like it still tastes like you're drinking a beer, and that's what I love about their products. So anyway, shout out to Whitewater, great beer.
Pretty delicious.
Mm.
And if you want to go get some of your own, try the Killaloo surprise yourself. Head on over to shopwhitewater.ca. Use the code Wally and Methot to get 15% off your next order. Brent, was it free local delivery too? Is that right?
Free local delivery in Ottawa, and then free shipping in Ontario.
They're good. It's a great deal for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So if you haven't tried this one, add it to the list. Yeah, absolutely. Keep drinking this.
Yeah.
See,
I will add this. I don't know. Did I talk about how I was hugging the toilet yesterday morning after the wedding?
You told us.
So I thought it was a good idea to eat a big bowl of mac and cheese. Like after the wedding, when I got back to the Airbnb, we were in Prince Edward County. I felt okay,
What time?
But I don't drink a lot anymore. So I wake up Sunday morning, like splitting headache. It's like 5 a.m. at this point. I've slept for like 4 hours. And I can't get back to bed because my head's pounding. So I'm sitting there at the end of my bed fighting it for like 2 hours, right? Finally, I'm like, okay. I got out of the bathroom. So I go in there, I do the deed. It wasn't pretty. Wicked headache. And I told myself yesterday, there's no chance I'm drinking anything for the next couple weeks. And here I am the next day having a whitewater beer live on camera.
It's so good. But this,
can I even say?
We should discuss more of that
stuff.
Okay,
can I just?
Okay. Here's a question for: since your playing career is long gone, have you ever woken up on a game day morning and after perhaps a late night?
So in my first call up to Columbus, I go. We're on the road. It happens to be the same weekend. The team's having their rookie party. Luckily, I didn't have to pay the $6,000 because I've just been called up. It was going to be temporary. So, but I'm still able to join for the festivities, right? So we're in Dallas, as a matter of fact, and I'm there as a Blue Jacket. We do the rookie party, and it's a good time. We have a lot of fun. We drink lots. Next morning, pale as a ghost, and it's puke and rally all morning. And we have a practice because Ken Hitchcock was our coach, and he was adamant that we were going to skate to sweat out the demons. At 11 o'clock or whatever time it was at. So I barely make it to the bus. I'm in the bathroom the whole bus ride, and the bus is dead quiet, like dead silent. And I'm puking in the bathroom, and I'm trying to puke, but be very quiet. And of course, barely get off the bus. A couple of the vets had to carry me. I think Freddie Modine was there. He's grabbing me and pulling me off. I don't even know. I don't remember practice. I remember puking over the boards a couple times in in a little garbage bag. But imagine, so it's one thing if you got to go to work, because I've worked in other lines of things other than pro sports, but imagine relying on your body to get you through a professional practice and you're puking the whole time. You've got nothing in your system. One of the worst experiences of my life, hands down, when it comes to hockey. And I can honestly tell you, I've never done that again. And that's something I'm very proud of. But oh man, not a worse feeling than knowing that you're under the microscope with the coaching staff watching you. I don't think I busted too many drills. I wasn't a drill buster per se, but I was able to kind of meticulously hide into the drills and behind people. So there were times where I'm in line in the corner and I'm supposed to be up next, and I just kept going to the back of the line. So I essentially just didn't do a lot of the drills. But when it came to like the system stuff, that's when I was exposed. So anyway, I'm still here to tell the tale.
Skate blade, maybe a skate blade was busted or something.
Yeah, like, trainer, come and fix my skate. I think I lost an edge.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if that was Gary Agnew as your coach. Did anybody say anything to you on the ice?
Well, no, it was so Hitchcock was there, right? Gary Agnew was coaching in the American League at the time. He was my head coach in the A. But I don't remember. I think was it Murphy? Gord Murphy was our D coach, I think. Anyway, no one said anything to me though. I think it was expected, and it's almost kind of like frowned upon if you're not hurting at least a little bit, right? I think in the spirit of team and chemistry, you have to fully commit the night before, and I fully committed.
Well, you know what? You always brought your A game to each and every event, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Brent, did you ever have any one of those where you had to maybe work through?
Wally?
I can imagine. Wally? I was really just setting this up. How about this? Give me the best.
Where does Wally begin?
I don't know if I've told this story, but it is the outdoor game 2010 Fenway. I think it's 2010 Fenway Park, Philadelphia, Boston, and they are going to announce after that game the Olympic team for Team USA. So it's a long day, and it's January 1st. And so my cameraman Dave Joy and I go out the night before, and I used to always have this rule. I called it game nights, like no drinking on game nights. So no night before stuff, because I didn't want to be hungover. Because for us, game days are long. We start at 8 in the morning, and they got practices at skates at 10:30, and then it goes all day. You file and you still do the game at night. I got trashed. So at the hotel, it was the Fairmont Battery Wharf. They just had the wine out. It's just free. And we're in the Gold Club, and Dave and I are enjoying it, and we're playing Jenga and all kinds of stuff together. I remember calling my wife and telling her, like, I'm watching something on TV. Later, she said that wasn't even close to anything I was watching. So but I don't realize I'm this drunk. Anyway, I get up the next morning, I go down for breakfast. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm like, yeah, I got this. I go back to my hotel room to get dressed, change to go to the rink, and I'm now hugging the toilet. I'm a mess. Like, I'm sweating. You know that feeling of just pure sweat? You can't
the worst
move.
Feeling. It's the worst.
I don't want to, like, all of a sudden I am now completely hungover. My life is in shambles, and I'm like, I have to do an outdoor game, the only game on the record right today, and the Olympic announcement. We get there. I'm sure I'm as green as the Green Monster. So we have a seat, but I don't have a seat that I can watch the game. It's in the press box, but it's actually like in the Fenway Park cafeteria type thing. Anyway, I remember putting my head down, and when I lifted it back up, I had the stat sheet from the first period across my face. I missed the entire first period.
Nice.
So I got the lines from the suit on my face. And then I just want this day over. And then it's delayed. The Olympic announcement's delayed, and it's like 400 degrees in the room, and I'm sweating through my suit. Like,
gross. I
can't get through that day enough. But I'll never forget the feeling I had covering the outdoor game that day. I couldn't tell you what happened in that game. I have no idea.
So do you guys, I want to know if I'm alone on this one. Do both of you ever go into the shower and just lay there in the hot shower on the floor when you're very hungover? That used to be obviously don't do that anymore. I've got 2 kids, but that was my move. And then I get out, because you get the instant kind of like, it feels good. It kind of mitigates your headache a little. And then you get out. Yeah. And for whatever reason, every time I'd get out, I just get this overwhelming wave of nausea again. It just comes on.
Yes.
Do you guys ever do
that? Right back in it.
Okay. Yeah, you're right back in the shit. Anyway.
No, never. I never have.
The key is just get it all out at night while you're still while you don't remember things. Get it all out at night before it happens. Then you don't remember.
I don't ever do that, Craig. Yeah, like everybody, I know the 2 digits down the throat. I'll do that in the morning, but like, I don't ever have the mind to do it at nighttime before I hit the wrapper. Like, it's always in the morning, and it's usually coming on when you get like those wicked headaches. And anyway, I'd like to change
one of my favorite hotels. Now.
I'm starting to get anxiety here.
I think it's the W in Hoboken, or it might be the W in New York. They would always put water and it's almost like 2 recovery tablets next to your pillow. Like they knew that you were going out the night before. I think it was always the W hotel. Yeah. I always appreciate that. I think Dallas was like that. The Rosewood there, they always took care of you there too. Anyway.
Whoa, no, didn't you guys stay at the, did we not stay at the Crescent in Dallas, that Crescent Hotel?
But it's owned by Rosewood. That's what it is.
Oh, that could be it. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, the one right by the Nobu? Right by the Shake Shack, right?
Yes. And they have a Nobu attached downstairs, right? Like in the building?
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I just did the
I didn't know
draft.
there's a Shake Shack near there.
Yeah, it's like right
around the corner.
right across the parking lot. Yeah.
It's
right
that's
by
the Brady Tkachuk draft.
Yeah. We hit that Shake
That's
Shack.
the hotel that Mike Hoffman was traded in, if I'm not mistaken. Like that whole
was it?
thing was haste. Yeah, that's where Pierre Dorian made all that announcement going on. Yeah.
Cool.
Those drafts
that was a crazy time.
Together.
I remember that one. Yeah. Oh yeah. Anyway.
Absolutely. Well, this was a nice little segue out of our whitewater taste test. Everybody's most drunkest time working.
Yeah,
that's good. Right. That's fun. We do have some more sponsor stuff to kind of clean up before the end of the day here. New partner alert. Ontario Clothing Company came in. They're really good, man. We wore their shirts on the last show. Super comfy. If you are looking for some new gear, check out their fall line over at OntarioClothingCompany.ca. And hey, if you use the promo code WHAMSHOW, 15% off your entire order. Really comfy, really great stuff. Support a good company. And yeah, hey, support us too. Go grab some gear for the fall because it's getting kind of chilly outside. If you can't wait or you can't decide what you want to get, we're giving away an Ontario Clothing Company prizing pack based off of our last show with Mike Johnson. We asked a question, which was, how many career goals did Mike Johnson score on Patrick Lalime? And the answer is 3. Cool little fact here that Brent pulled, which is Patrick Lalime, he was playing on 3 different teams each time. So Pittsburgh, Ottawa, Buffalo. So shout out to @Spencer Gillian. I hope I said that right. Keep an eye on your DMs. We're going to slide in there and figure out how to get you your Ontario Clothing Company prizing pack. Everybody else, head on over there, check out their website, grab yourself some stuff because it's pretty sweet.
Coming up Thursday, gentlemen, Jacques Martin, former Ottawa Senator head coach, the winningest head coach in Senators history, will join us. Looking forward to that. Boys, enjoy your beers. It's now time for lunch.
Yeah.
And we'll see you on Thursday. Thanks for watching, everybody. You're watching the Wally and Methot Show. We'll see you next time.